Good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shleim Filan Chaya Baserach. We're on Daf Kuf Ches Amid Beis, 4 lines from the top. Chaymer Bahalo. Back in the Mishnah, we had said there was a chumrah of the isser of being male bachutz over shchita bachutz, and there was a chumrah of shchita bachutz over halah bachutz. We said halah has it that even if it's done by two people, you're still chayiv. While shchita, if it was done by two people, you're potter. Ish ish ma talmud loimer. What does it say? Ish ish. The rabbi shnaim she'achsu be'ever says by halah ish ish. That's going to tell you even if two people are holding on to the aver when they bring it onto the mizbeach b'chutz v'helu shechayvin. Why would I think they wouldn't be chayiv? Sheyachal v'leidinu u'ma ha'shoichet lahedjit shechayiv shnayim. We said the chumrah of shchita over halah is that shchita even is chayiv when he shechts just a regular shchita of a carbon, that's chayiv. And so you chayiv for shoichet lahedjit shnayim she'achzu b'sakim v'shachtu purim. But we said if two people are holding on to the knife and doing the shchita, they're potter. Hamal lahedjit she'potter ein edin shnayim she'achzu purim. So certainly, when someone is mala, it does halah for a hedyet. If halah, which is being mala to a hedyet, which we know a person is potter for, certainly if two people are holding on to the aver, it should be potter. That's why we need the pasuk of ishish. That's Rav Shimon. Rabbi Yosi Aimer. So and that's like our Mishnah, right? Our Mishnah had said that was the chumrah of halah over shchita. That halah is chayiv with shtayim and shchita is not. Rabbi Yosi Aimer hahu. I'm sorry.
Where are we up to? I'm sorry.
We're on Daf Kuf Ches Amid Beis, about 10 lines down from the top. Rabbi Yosi Aimer. Rabbi Yosi says hu echad v'leishnayim. He says, no, hahu, the pasuk says, hahu, legabi halah, that tells you echad v'leishnaim, and it can only be one, it can't be two people being mali aver. So he doesn't agree with our Mishnah that says that there's a chumrah of halah over shchita, that it can be done with two people. Imkein matam loimer ish ish. If so, what is the pasuk that we had brought, that Reb Shimon had brought, that says ish ish, which tells you even two people? Divritara kolashim b'nei adam. That's the regular lashon. That's the way we describe it. It doesn't mean to say anything about how many people are doing the halah. Rav Shimon hayahu. What does Rav Shimon do with this hahu? We need it, like we said on the top of the yamid. The hahu that Rabbi Yosi uses to tell you that yichayiv only for one, not for two people doing it. He says it's coming to exclude someone who's a shaygig or an honest umutah. If he's if they're either not knowing that it's usher, or someone told him that it's not usher, or he was an einus, someone forced him to do it. Rabbi Yosi mehu ahu. Rabbi Yosi learns that out. It doesn't just say who; it says hahu. The extra hey tells you both. It tells you both that it's only one person. It's only if one person brings up the aver, as well as that it has to be that he does it intentionally and not intentionally, but not a sheig einus muta. Rav Shimon hahu loy darish. Rav Shimon doesn't agree with that drasha. So the Gemara of Rabbi Yosi, in the high ish dibur Torah klashim bnei adam, hahu ish nami dibur lashon k'nei adam. We said that the Torah used the lashon ish both by the shchita and by the halah. So we're saying now that the ish that it says by halah doesn't tell us anything, because it's just the Torah dibur lashon k'nei adam. That means the ish that it says by shchita is also klashim bnei adam. So we had used ish to tell you that sheichet lahedjit is chayiv. Where now is we going to learn that it's chayiv? Nafkal midam yichashav leishahu dam shafech va'afilu sheichet leish. The Torah says dam yichashav leishahu, says leishahu. So that's telling you, even if he's shechting it, having in mind for a hedjit, means he's just shechting it stam. Legabi shchita, he's still going to be chayiv, not from ish. Zok the Gemara, hella v'chaza v'hella. Amarish Lakish. Right? The Mishnah had said if someone we brought in the Mishnah on the previous block, at the end of the Mishnah, it said, hella v'chaza v'hella chayev al kol aliyah. If a person brings multiple halos outside, he's going to be chayev for each one. Divrei Reb Shimon, Reb Yosi Yomein chayev alachas. Reb Yosi says he's only chayev one. So Dr. Gemara. Hella v'chaza v'hella am Reish Lakish machlekes bedalad v'heivarim. The machlekes between Reb Yosi and Reb Shimon. Reb Yosi says you potter, you only chayev one, and Reb Shimon says you chayev for each one. That's talking about where he separated the single carbon into 4 or 5 separate avarim. He took a full aver and he did each one separately b'chutz. The masava kiksev lasas oisai ala shamul chayev ein chayev ala chasa. Rabbi Yosi, who says that you're only chayev one, it's because he says oisai tells you it has to be a shalom, it has to be a full carbon. But not if it's missing part of the carbon. So therefore, just doing one aver is not going to be mechayev him separately. Avo behema, achasar kol behema ksiv. Umasav kol aver ve'aver ksiv. But Rav Shimon, who says you're going to be chayev al kol aver ve'aver, he says when it says oisai, lasas oisai, it means oisai meaning a single aver. Aver is a sufficient unit that you could be chayev separately on each one. The Gemara continues, the Rish Lakish continues, Aval Ever Echad, Divrei Hakol in a Chayev Alachas. But if you split up a single Ever into pieces, you're certainly not going to be Chayev one, even according to Reb Shimon, more than one. So that was Rish Lakish's version of the Machlekes. The Yechanama Machlekes be'Ever Echad. The Machlekes Legabi Ever Echad, where there was one Ever that was divided up into parts. The Marsava Mukterei Pnim Shechashu Behelu B'chutz Chayev. One man Amar, the man Amar who says that you're going to be chayev for each one. He holds something that was shechted inside that then became diminished, and then you bring it outside, you're chayev. Umasav a pot. So let's see Rashi on this. They both agree that when the Torah says oisai, it's talking about a full aver. And therefore, if you bring 4 or 5 avarim, like Rish Lakish had said, you would taka be chayev, even according to Rabbi Yosi, for each one. But the man Amar who says that you're going to be chayev even for a portion of an aver, he holds that when you shecht something inside and then it gets diminished and you bring it outside your chayev, the hamahadrin poik in the mizbeach. That will chasa. This is what we had a few blot ago. That if the pieces of the basar that went on the mizbeach, let's say by an oila, if they fell off the mizbeach during the fire, you return them to the mizbeach. So he says that which we said when something that had a shechita b'fnim, so it's right to be brought on the mizbeach b'fnim. So that has the din that it gets a lower standard of chesaron, because the din is that if you were to bring the basar of, let's say, an oila on the mizbeach and it was divided, and Eva was divided into pieces, you'd still be chayiv for bringing each piece separately. You'd put the piece back on the mizbeach. So when the Torah says oisai, it's referring to something that was shechted outside, which is anyway not shaykh to be brought inside. But something that was shechted inside, that could be brought inside, has a lower standard, and that's where they're arguing that Rabbi Yosi will say that you're only going to be mechayev one. He's not influenced by the fact that it's paikin. As we'll see, he doesn't hold of paikin, and that you return it back to the mizbeach. And Rosh Hashanah holds you do, and therefore it could even be a kazayis from a aver. Like we said, but if it was 4 or 5 avarim, but the Torah said, I say everyone would agree that you're chayiv for each one separately. Chayiv al kol aver ve'aver. Upliga de'ula. And Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish disagree with Ula. Ula has a third version of what the machlekes is. The Amar Ula, Hakol Moedim Muktar Pnim Shechashu V'Hela B'Chot Shechayev. Everyone agrees that we say because if you shecht it inside, if you shechted the carbon inside, and then it has a din that it could go on the mizbech. Since there's a din of paikin, both Rav Shimon and Rabbi Yossi would agree that you're going to be chayiv for a part of an aver. They're arguing about something that was shechted outside, shechazu b'hel b'chutz, that you brought it outside. The masa of a potter. That they're arguing in the case of a carbon that was brought outside. So they're arguing about they're not agreeing with what we said before, that everyone holds that it's an aver, that the oisai means an aver. Rav Shimon is saying that even less than an aver, as long as it's more, oisai just means that it's more than a kazayas, which is the minimum amount that you could bring. And Rabbi Yossi holds, no, you have to have a full aver on Muktari Chutz. But in a Chanami, what's brought b'fnim will have the din of paikin, and therefore will be any amount, up to more than a kazayas. Ikadamri Amar Ula, there's another version of Ula, where he says, Akol Moedim Muktari Chutz shechasu v'hela b'chutz shehu pater. L'nechel b'kari b'fnim shechasu v'hela b'chutz, the masa b'pater u'masa b'chayev. So this version of Ula is the same as Rabbi Yochanan, that he's going to say it's going to, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yossi and Rav Shimon will argue about whether you say paikin or not. Upligid Avuah de Shmuel, Alish Nekama de Ula. Avuah de Shmuel disagrees with the first version of Ula. The Amar Avuah de Shmuel, Kaman Mahadrin and paikin legab mizbech, Kaman the like Rabbi Yossi. He says that according to Rabbi Yossi, we don't say Mahadrin and paikin legab mizbech, and that was the reason why we were mechalik in Rabbi Yochanan, but in the first version of Ula, we're saying everyone agrees that you say paikin. So Avuah de Shmuel l'chayra is not like that version, that first version of Ula. So we said he's not chayiv for bringing a carbon b'chutz until he brings it on a mizbeach. That was Reb Yossi. Reb Shimon said even if he brings it on a Evan or a Sela. Again, Reb Yossi is the makel that you have to bring it on Mizbeach. Reb Shimon is the mach. Amr Rav Huna, my time of the Reb Yossi. Why does Reb Yossi say it must be brought on a Mizbeach in order to be chayav b'chutz? T'chseva even nois Mizbeach l'Hashem. The Torah says that Noach built a Mizbeach l'Hashem, and we're understanding that whatever you're going to be chayiv as a bama outside of the times when there's a Beis Hamikdash, that's what you're going to be chayiv for being hala b'chutz. So since Noach had to build a Mizbeach in order to be mala his carbon, so that's what's required in order to be chayiv hala b'chutz. I'm Rav Yochanan, my time with Rav Shimon was Rav Shimon's reason. T'chseva yikach man Noach as gediya yizim ves hamincha v'yal al atzor l'Hashem. It says by Manoach, when he heard that Shimshon was going to be born, he took a carbon and he brought it on a rack. He didn't need to bring it on a mizbech. What does Rav Shimon say? It does say that Noach built a mizbech. So doesn't mean that he built an actual mizbech. It means he lifted it up higher. Doesn't he made a place to put it higher, but not a mizbech. What about that? It says Manoach put it on a rock. What is the Rabbi Yossi who says it needs to be on a mizbech? It says Manoach didn't need a mizbech. Where it says that was a malach came and told him to do it. So since it was a malach came and told him to do it, he did it as he was instructed without a mizbech. Viba is saying another explanation of the machlokes. Hainu Tanya Reb Shimon. Because the Tanya Reb Shimon oim mizbech Pesach Ayom Meid ve'ei mizbech babama. The Torah says in the Chiyuv that where the Torah says that you have to bring the carbon into the Pesach Hayom Meid, the pasuk says, "V'zara kakaynes Adam al mizbech Hashem Pesach Hayom Meid v'hikter achelav l'reich nichayach l'Hashem." So it's saying only a mizbeach that's Pesach Hayom, but there's no need for a mizbeach by a bama. Lefika chalal asel al yaven chayiv. So that's the reason for Rav Shimon. In fact, the Gemara. So this is talking about how a person brings on a bama. In fact, the Gemara, you should really stick in another word, chayiv. Why are we saying if he does it on a even or a sela, he's chayiv? Yatzami by we should say someone who we're talking about the dinim of bringing on a bama there. We're not talking about halos chutz. So why do we say chayiv? We should say he was yaitza his carbon that he brought on the bama. It's coming to say that if it's a time when the bamas are mutter, then you could bring it there. But if it's a time of Isra bamas, when you're not allowed to bring on a bama, then you'd be chayiv for halos chutz. By Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina, Keren v'keves v'yisaid v'yibu amashi yakvu b'bama. According to Rabbi Yossi, who says that you need to have a mizbeach, do you need all the different parts of a mizbeach? Do you need to have the horns, and do you need to have the ramp, and do you need to have the foundation, the one walk, the one amma foundation on the bottom? For Yibua, does it need to be squared? Mausha Yakvu Babama. They Ma'akim and Abama, Amler Vimia Tanya, Kamikav Shivu, you say Ma'akim Babama, Gedoyla, Ve'em Ma'akim Babama Ktana. It depends on which type of Bama we're talking about. A Bama Gedoyla, which is the Bamas where they brought Karbanas Tzibur in a few of in I think Rashi says Noiv and Givoin and in Shiloi and in the Beis Hamikdash. In those places they're required, but a regular bama outside of those do not need all these different features. Zok the Mishnah. Echad kachim ksherim ve'echad kachim shulim she'ipsulim b'kodesh v'kriv machutz chayiv. We're still talking about being mala b'chutz. We're sticking now to halah. We're not talking about shchita anymore. So someone who brings, whether it's a kachim that's kosher, or whether it's a kachim that's pasul, as long as shahaya psulim b'kodesh, if the psulim is b'kodesh, which we had before this concept, right? We said that we made a distinction of when there's only certain karbanos that im alula yardu, that even if they're pasul, if they were brought up on the mizbech, you don't take them down. And we said those are the ones that are psulam b'kodesh. So the Mishnah is saying this din of hela b'chutz is only going to be a carbon that's kosher that you brought b'chutz, or that it has a psul b'kodesh that has a dinim alula yardu, then it will also be chayiv for being maleh b'chutz. It still has a sufficient kedusha that was put on the mizbech. You wouldn't be allowed to take it down. You wouldn't be required to take it down. So then it also has a din that if you bring it b'chutz, you're going to be chayiv for halah b'chutz. Hamal kazayis min ha'oila or min ha'merum b'chutz chayiv. If someone mixed a kazayis from an oila, remember an oila, so all the basar gets burnt on the mizbech, and the emurim. So he took a half a kazayis from the oila, from the basar of the oila, together with a half a kazayis of the emurim of the oila, and he combined them. He's going to be chayiv because both of these things are supposed to be burnt up on the mizbech. As we're going to see, a shlamim, where you don't burn the basar on the mizbech, you can't combine the basar and burn it on the mizbech together with the chatzi zayis of the emur. Zak Gemara, Tan Rabban. Now this next Gemara is very just listing things that we already said in previous Mishnais. Tan Rabban, we have a brisa that says where this comes from. Asher yala oila izevach. How do we know to include other karbanos in the din of being mala b'chutz, including ashram and chatas or other other kachei kachim, which is very few. It's really, I think Rashi says it would. I think kivshei atzeres and emura kachim kalim and all the emurim of kachim kalim that are supposed to be burnt inside. Where do we know that if you burn them outside that you chayiv? Tamalaim is zevach, includes anything that's a carbon. Minayin l'rabos hakaimitz, the portion of a mincha that gets burnt on the mizbeach, valavina, which also gets burnt with the kaimitz, Faktoiris, the ktoiris that gets burnt on the mizbeach. Minchas kaihanim is separate, is different than a regular mincha than the kaimitz because the whole thing gets burnt on the mizbeach. There's no kaimitz taken from it. Minchas kain mashiach, again the minchas chavitin of the kain that he brings every day. V'amenasach shloishalugan yayin, the shloisha yugan yayin that comes together with those carbon that you bring minchas nesachim with it. U'shloishalugan mayim, and the mayim that is brought on the mizbeach on sukkos. Where do we know that all these things, if you mal them b'chutz, that you chayav? Because these are all things that are supposed to be brought on the mizbeach. Some of them are burnt. The mayim is not burnt; it's poured, but it's also it gets sacrificed on the mizbeach. Talmud loymer vel pesach oyel mayid lo yaviyenu. Kol abal pesach oyel mayid chayv olavim b'chutz. Anything that's brought, that's supposed to be brought as a hakrava in the oyel mayid, you chayav for bringing it b'chutz. V'ein li'ela kachim ksherim minayin l'rabis psulin. How do we? This only tells you kachim that are kosher, right? Something that's ready to be brought b'fnim in the oyel mayid. How do we know to include the psulin, like the Mishnah said that psulin is b'kodesh, that they have a din that im Allah yadu kagayin halon. These and this list we had before when we were going through the dinim of psulin b'kodesh and not psulin b'kodesh. So these are all the things that psulin are b'kodesh, things that the psul is inside the Beis Hamikdash. Going halon, something that was left over, v'hayoytza, something that was brought out of the Beis Hamikdash after it was properly prepared inside the Beis Hamikdash. V'atome became tame in the Beis Hamikdash. Nishat chutz l'zmani v'chutz l'koymei, something that was brought as a pigel or chutz l'koymei. Yeshekibuz psulin, v'zarku es damai. If a zar was makabel the dam or through the dam, which also possible to come v'nid lamata shnas lamata l'mayla v'nid l'mayla shnas lamata. Something that was supposed to be b'chutz that was given b'fnim, and vice versa. Upesach v'chatas shenosan shaloi l'shmon. A pesach and chatas that we know that if you do shaloi l'shmon, it passes the carbon. All these things are psulim, but they're psulim b'kodesh, and therefore they, like we said in the Mishnah, they do have a din that hella b'chutz is chayav. Minayin tamaloi meloi v'yenu lasis. Kol makabel pesach ayol mayid chayav l'lav b'chutz. Since it says lasos to do it. Lasis is a lashon that doesn't mean it's like if you're saying kala. If you wanted to require something that's kosher, you'd say maybe lo yeviyenu lahakriv. You'd say a lashon of carbon. When you say lasis, that's a more choldik a lashon. It's coming to tell you even anything that's miskabel b'pesach ayom mayid that has a dinim Allah yardu, even though it's puzzle, you're still going to be chayiv for being malet b'chutz. Something more vaita. Malek kazayis mina oilam. So we had said in the Mishnah that if you took apart, you said you took a chatzi zayis of a oila, of the basar of a oila, and a chatzi zayis of the emurim of a oila, and you brought them outside, you're going to be chayiv because they're both destined. They're both supposed to be brought on the mizbeach b'fnim. So you see from this that it's only a oila that you're going to be chayiv because its basar goes on the mizbeach, but the shlam that its basar is eaten by the owners. If you bring that basar, half of a ksayis of that basar together with half a ksayis of the murim of a shlamim, that's not going to be chayiv you. Tznin lahadatan rabban. Well, this is we have a brisa that says the same thing. Oila ve'miruah mitzdarfen lekazayis aloisa mechutz. And oila and its emurim are mitzdarf for kazayis to if you malit b'chutz that you're going to be chayiv. And additionally, the brisa says, and this is the part we get in trouble with. So that already says what we said in our Mishnah. And also, you're going to be chayiv on it for pigel noiser v'tamei. The mashmois is if you eat pigel noiser and tamei of an oila, that of the emurim together with the basar, you're going to be chayiv even though it's a half kazayis of each. So bishlam halos oila de kolol in shlamim loy. So we can understand the first part that we say being mala. You're not going to be chayiv for shlamim because shlamim the basar is not eaten, so it's supposed to be eaten. So if you burn it on the mizbeach, you're not going to be chayiv. Elapigel nois v'tamei my time. Why should you not be chayiv for consuming pigel noiser and tamei, for eating noiser and pigel noiser and tamei? If you ate a chatzi zayis from the basar of a shlamim together with the emurim, but tanan kol hapigulim mitzdarfen, kol hanoisim mitzdarfen. We learned that when it comes to eating, you're chayiv for you could be mitzdaref the basar with the emurim to be chayiv for pigel or noiser or tamei. or at least we didn't say tame, but we said legabi pigel and noiser. So kasha pigel a pigel, kasha and noiser and noiser. So my pigel a pigel like kasha. Pigel a pigel is not a question. You can't ask the kasha from pigel, even though we said that pigel, the legabi shlamim, it will be mitzdarf. The emurim together with the basar of a shlamim. Kam pigel, kam machshavas pigel. When we said that it's mitzdarf, that's legabi eating pigel. But legabi machshavas pigel, you have a machshava to to be let's say to eat part of the basar chutz a chatzi zayis of the basar after the zman, and then he also has a machshava to burn part of the meat after the zman. Then you don't you're not mitzdarif the two of them. So that's takat different dinim. Noiser and noiser like kasha, and noiser is also not fair. Kama noiser, kama nishi toisu actually nizer kada. When we say that it is mitzdarf, it's going to be eating noiser, which, like we said, it is mitzdarf. But when we said it's not mitzdarf, it's where he left over before the zrikas hadam. And the question is, how much has to be left at the time that he zayrik the dam to make him to make it that it's still a kosher carbon, that if when he zayrik the dam, it's going to be a valid zrikas adam, and then he'll have still a din of noiser. So tomorrow money Rav Yeshua, the tiny Yeshua Omer, kol hazvachim shebetoyrish nishtaya by kazayis basar ukazayis chelev. Any carbon that has a kazayis basar and a kazayis chelev, meaning of the emurim, zerikas adam, you still zerik adam. Chatzi zayis basar, chatzi zayis chelev ain't a zerikas adam. But if it's only a chatzi zayis, you can't. Uba oila chatzi zayis basar, chatzi zayis chelev. Zerek Zadam Neshikulakol. But this is only the Gabi Shlamim, not the Gabi Oila, because by an Oila, it's all burnt together. So Rabbi Yeshua will be, it's the that will be the explanation of why we say the Gabi Noiser, if it's a Chatzi Zayis Chelev, or Chatzi Zayis Emurim together with Chatzi Zayis of Basar, by a Shlamim, it's not going to be mitzdarf to require a zirika, and therefore there won't be a din noiser on what's left over. You only have noiser after you do a valid zrika, and this was not a valid zrika. Mincha, he finishes off, afilu kula kayemes la yizrak. He says, in mincha, even if the whole thing is left over, you're not zayrik. So mincha mayavidite. What are you talking about in mincha? Mincha doesn't have a zrika. Zrika is dam. Mincha is not dam. Mincha is all flour. Zaktumara, Amar Papa, Minchas Nesacham Haboa Mazevach. It's not talking about a mincha on its own. It's saying if you don't have a kazayas of the chalev and of the bus, if you only have a kazayas and chalev of a shlamim, even if you have the whole mincha left over, there's no zrikas adam on that, and therefore it's not going to have a din of noiser. So let's just see this mission. Let's see the mission. So the mission. The kaimitz, and this is what we just said before. Hakaimitz, v'halavayna, v'haktara, v'haktiris, uminchas kehanim, uminchas kayin mashiach, uminchas nesachim, shehikr me'achzmen, kazayis b'chutz, chayiv. If you bring a kazayis of any one of these things, b'chutz, like we said, the Torah was marbe, even things that are not a carbon. But if they're supposed to be brought, be brought on the mizbeach b'fnim, you're chayiv for bringing them outside. If you bring even a kazayis from these, you're going to be chayiv. Rebbe Lazar poiter achi yakar veskulam. Rebbe Lazar says, no, you potter until you bring the whole thing. And this machloikis is dependent on that if the Torah says oisai, so it has to, we're going according to the mandam before that oisai says means only kazayis, right? We had that four-way machloikis, Rish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, and Ula. So going according to Ula that it was you only need a kazayis. But since all you need of these things to burn them in the inside the Beis Hamikdash is a kazayis, so if you do that, even outside, you're going to be chayev. But he says that you can't. with these things, let's say the Torah says you have to bring shloisha esrainim of a mincha, and you bring less than that, you're going to be potter. It's not going to be a valid. It's not going to be a good haktara. So therefore, you're going to be potter. The Chacham say that no. The Tanakama says that even though it's true that you do have to bring the whole thing, you could be makter it in different portions. So even a kazayas of it is considered the haktara, even though ultimately you're required to bring the whole thing. So even if you did a portion of it outside, you're going to be chayiv. All of these, if you brought it b'fnim and you left over kazayas and you brought it b'chutz chayiv, that even Rebbe Lazar would agree. If you only had one kazayas left to be brought inside and you brought it outside, you're going to be chayiv. Then he won't require the whole thing. Potter. And all of them, if you that were missing any portion of that he did, it wasn't brought in the first place with the entire amount that was required to be brought for it. That means if it's not available to be burnt even inside, then it's going to be chayiv. It got lost, or if it wasn't brought in the first place, because I guess that wouldn't be a hectare. So it means that he brought it first properly, but then it's lost, so you don't have the full amount. It's going to be potter because it's not a valid aktara inside as well. And the Mishnah finally says, Hamakir could kachim ve'emurim b'chutz chayiv. If someone is makiv basar of carbon and the emurim, you're going to be chayiv. The Gemara is going to explain what this is referring to. I mean, we say that it's talking about if it was if the basar was still some basar attached to the emurim, and he's makar b'chutz, he's still going to be chayiv. Okay, we'll see later what the chayim, what the issue with that is. Okay, I think we'll stop over here. Yasher koyach. We'll try, if I'm up to it, I'm going to try to learn again tonight. You're going to have to really amp it up a lot for the next week. We only have 1 week left.